This is The Midnight Box, a late-night broadcast from Once Upon a Dark. Tonight's story is about a young man who preferred the desert to conversation. Everett Ruess did not live in cities for long. By 1934, he had already made a habit of leaving. He moved through the American Southwest on foot and by mule, carrying drawing tools, writing letters home, choosing distance over permanence. He was young, still in his 20s, but his letters carried conviction. He wrote about desert light, about canyon walls at dusk, about the way silence felt expansive rather than empty. He did not describe solitude as loneliness. He described it as clarity. The American Southwest in the early 1930s was not fully mapped by tourism. There were trails, there were settlements, but there were also miles of unmarked terrain, Escalante canyons, desert plateaus, sandstone corridors shaped by wind. To Ruess, these were not obstacles, they were invitation. He traveled lightly, a few books, sketch materials, supplies for camp. He wrote frequently to his parents. The letters were affectionate, reflective, certain in their choice of path. He did not sound lost. He sounded intentional. Everett Ruess believed in deliberate wandering, in choosing remoteness, in standing inside landscape long enough to feel small within it. That is the world he inhabited. And that is the world that eventually did not return him. In November of 1934, Everett Ruess was traveling through the canyon country of southern Utah. He had been moving for weeks, camping beneath rock overhangs, sketching formations shaped by wind and water, writing letters home when he reached a post route. There was no urgency in his pace. He traveled as he preferred, slowly. He had 2 burros with him. They carried supplies. He named them. He spoke of them in his letters, not as burdens, but as companions. The rhythm of travel was measured in footsteps and campfires. There were no deadlines, only distance. He carved his name into sandstone at times, small inscriptions left behind as markers of passage, not declarations, just presence. He had done this before. The desert did not resist him. It received him. The canyons around Escalante were not empty. They were immense. Walls rose in layered red and ochre. Dry washes curved through stone corridors. Wind moved across open plateaus without obstruction. To stand alone, there was to feel both protected and exposed. Everett wrote that he preferred the desert to conversation. He found it honest. He found it clarifying. There is no indication in his final letters of distress, no sign of retreat, only continuation. He made camp. He tended to the animals. He walked the terrain he had chosen. The days did not feel dramatic. They felt deliberate. And yet, the desert holds distance differently than cities do. There are no clocks in canyon walls, no witnesses in open plateau. Movement leaves little trace. His final confirmed camp was near the Escalante River. There were signs of ordinary departure. Belongings arranged, animals prepared, nothing scattered, nothing suggesting haste, only the continuation of a journey. And then, the record pauses. Everett Ruess wrote regularly, not every week, but often enough that silence was noticeable. His parents had grown accustomed to the rhythm. A letter from Arizona, then Utah, then another canyon described in careful detail. The desert was distant, but his handwriting bridged it. When the letters paused, it did not alarm them immediately. Travel delayed post, weather slowed routes, supplies took time to restock, silence in wilderness travel had margin. Weeks passed, then more. No new location, no sketch enclosed, no reflection on canyon light. The rhythm that had reassured them failed to resume. There was no dramatic telegram, no confirmed sighting of distress, only absence where correspondence had once been steady. Concern formed slowly, not panic, recognition. A pattern had broken. In cities, disappearance is immediate. In wilderness, it unfolds. You wait for the rider to appear over a ridge, for the letter to reach town, for the delay to explain itself. When it does not, the landscape begins to feel larger than it had before. By early 1935, the silence could no longer be dismissed as distance. It had become absence. Once the silence could no longer be explained by distance, inquiries began. Friends retraced likely routes. Local authorities were contacted. Search parties moved through the Escalante region. Tracks were examined, campsites revisited, canyon walls scanned for inscriptions. The burros were eventually located, alive but separated from him. That detail altered the search. The animals hadn't vanished. They had been found wandering, which suggested departure or separation, but not certainty. Searchers descended into narrow canyon corridors. They climbed ridges. They scanned dry washes for disturbance in sand. The terrain did not offer clear answers. Rock absorbs footprints. Wind erases direction. Distance multiplies uncertainty. No confirmed remains were found. No definitive sign of violence. No clear indication of voluntary departure. Only terrain, layered, silent. Maps were incomplete. Navigation was imprecise. The Escalante canyons were vast and lightly traveled. A person could move through them and leave almost no trace, or stop moving at all. Search efforts continued for months. Interest did not evaporate quickly, but the landscape was not cooperative. Each mile revealed more miles. Each canyon opened into another. Eventually, search diminished, not because effort failed, but because the desert offered nothing that could be held. Everett Ruess was never conclusively found. Over the decades, there were theories. Fragments of bone identified and later disputed. Stories retold. Speculation offered and withdrawn. But no certainty has replaced the silence of 1934. The Escalante canyons remain. Sandstone still warms at dusk. Wind still moves across plateau without interruption. The terrain did not change shape because one traveler stopped moving within it. It continued. There are still carvings bearing his name, small inscriptions in rock, not proclamations, just presence, evidence that he stood somewhere long enough to leave a mark. His letters survive. They describe solitude, not as hardship, but as devotion. He wrote of preferring desert to conversation, of finding clarity in distance, of walking because walking felt honest. It is possible to read those letters now and feel his certainty. It is possible to stand in canyon country and imagine his silhouette against stone. But imagination does not replace record. There is no documented moment of finality, no confirmed witness to his last steps, only landscape and writing, and the space between them. Some disappearances rupture public life. This one altered only a circle of letters and the memory of a young man who chose remoteness. The desert did not take him loudly. It simply did not return him. And so the record ends where his letters end. In stone, in ink, in the quiet he sought. That was tonight's story. You've been listening to The Midnight Box. Wherever you are, thank you for listening. Good night.